This is Jennifer Gonzalez welcoming you to episode 39 of the Cult of Pedagogy podcast. In this episode, I'm going to talk about how to plan outstanding tech training for your teachers. I recently got an email from a guy who had just been hired as a tech specialist for a school district. His job would be to help teachers in his school use technology in their classrooms in the best way possible. Although he had some ideas for how to approach the position, he wondered if I had any thoughts or advice on how he could best serve the teachers in his district. I think it's safe to assume that this guy is not alone in his wondering. There is just so much buzz about technology in education, so many opinions about the right and wrong way to do it, and very little authoritative information. There's no definitive guide to tech integration. Everyone's just kind of doing what they think is best. Administrators are setting aside funds to purchase new devices and trying to figure out the best kind of training to give their teachers. And in this process, surely there have been a lot of mistakes and missteps. So today I'm going to share with you what I wrote back to the tech integration guy, the advice I gave him for planning and executing the best tech training possible for teachers. I have done some tech training myself, and I've taken some graduate courses in tech integration. But to add greater expertise to my own advice, I sought the input of 3 other people who have years of experience in this field. Sarah Thomas, a regional technology coordinator for Prince George's County, Maryland; Craig Badura, a PK-12 technology integration specialist in Aurora, Nebraska; and Rodney Turner, an educational technology consultant in Phoenix, Arizona. The tips we're all going to provide here are for 2 different groups of people. The first is made up of those who actually give tech trainings to educators. It's likely that you probably already do many of these things, but there may be 1 or 2 pointers that can enhance what you're already doing. The other group that can benefit from these tips is those who arrange tech trainings, school leaders who are trying to organize the best experience possible. The advice we offer here may help you get clearer about what you want and need from a tech trainer, or what elements you might want to ask for to ensure your teachers get as much as they can from the session. Before we start, I wanted to let listeners know about another resource you'll probably be interested in. I have a book, it's a digital book actually, called The Teacher's Guide to Tech. I created it to help teachers sort through all the different tools out there, learn about them quickly, and make decisions about the tools and apps that will really enhance their work as teachers. What I did was take over 100 tech tools and I divided them into categories: presentation tools, assessment tools, video creation tools, collaboration tools. There's 30 categories in all. And for each one, I explain in plain English what the tool does and how teachers can use it in their classrooms. Then I provide a link to the tool's website, a screenshot of the tool in action, and another link straight to a video that shows the tool in use. It took hundreds of hours to put it together, but my hope is that it will save teachers hundreds of hours of time. To take a closer look, just go to teachersguidetotech.com. Okay, here are our suggestions for planning and executing the best tech training for teachers. Tip number 1 is get to know your audience. Just like knowing our students helps us teach them more effectively, knowing the skill levels, interests, and needs of the teachers will help you better customize training for them. So do whatever you can to get to know who you're training beforehand. 2 methods work especially well. The first one is a pre-training survey. And this advice comes from me. Before I start planning any kind of training for a group of teachers, I like to send out a survey on a simple Google form to learn more about them. When the training is going to be tech specific, these are the questions that I will ask. First is the name, grade level, and subject area of the teacher. This is important so that later on, if I'm looking for a teacher who can help out or those who may be in special situations, I can actually locate them. Having an idea of the grade level and subject area of my teachers also helps me identify the tools that will be a good fit for them. The second question is, how do you currently use technology in your classroom? This is an open-ended question. I like to hear in the person's own words what their current relationship is with technology. Some teachers report back very little use, and others will give me a very lengthy answer with a list of their favorite tools. The third question is, how would you like to be using technology in your teaching? This is another open-ended question. Here, I want to gauge teachers' awareness of possibilities and where they see tech fitting in. Also, if I'm able to help them reach this next level in my training, I would love to be able to do that. If I can't, I may be able to provide them with resources so that they can help themselves. One reason I want to provide a few open-ended questions is because I don't want to assume I know everything about teachers' concerns and needs. So these kinds of questions allow room for some new information. The next question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable are you with using technology, with 1 being not at all and 5 being very comfortable? I ask this because I want to get a sense for how willing and able the group will be to take risks with technology. I usually expect to get a mix of responses here, but I ask the question mostly to see if there's a strong leaning in one direction or another. If most respondents tell me that they're very comfortable, I will assume I don't have to explain some very basic terminology. If many feel uncomfortable, I'm more likely to be extra encouraging and define terms as I go. The next question I ask is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you describe the access you and your students have to technology, with 1 being inadequate and 5 being excellent? This one is pretty important because even if a teacher is comfortable with and interested in technology, working in a building that has insufficient bandwidth or heavy-handed site blocking or limited devices will certainly limit the kinds of tools I can share with them. Yes, I can ask the district administrators this question, but I think it's also important to determine each teacher's perception of access. The last question is, which of these tools or topics would you like to know more about? And then I give them a list to choose from. This list can contain anything you want, and for me it changes depending on the school I'm going to and what priorities the district has already identified. I'll set up the checklist so that respondents can check as many items as they like. On past surveys, I have listed tools like Google Drive and all of its built-in tools like Docs, Slides, and Forms, flipped learning tools like Edpuzzle, tools that students can use to demonstrate their learning like presentation tools, interactive posters, podcasting tools. I will also list maybe discussion tools like Today's Meet, learning management systems like Edmodo or Google Classroom, and student response tools like Kahoot. But really, it's up to you. It could be a list of tools that you know that you're capable of training them on and see which ones they're most interested in learning about. So that pre-training survey for me is very helpful in just getting to know who my audience is. Now, the second way that you can do this, if you can't send out a survey ahead of time, is to work the room. Get to know your audience the day of the training. Now here, I got advice from Rodney Turner.
What I love to do is to circulate the room. I come in early and I set my stuff up and I have it done. So that way, as people are coming in, I talk to them. Hi, how are you doing? My name's Rodney. Where are you from? What grade? What do you teach? What do you want to learn from this session? And that has helped me so much in being able to reach out to people to understand where they're coming from. So that way, as I'm tailoring what I have, my plan, I can look at audience members and make a comment and realize that I'm giving them something that they really, really need to know about.
So the first tip is to get to know your audience. Tip number 2 is force multiply. A force multiplier is something that, when added to and used by a combat force, significantly increases the strength of that force and enhances the probability of a successful mission. So this is a military term. In other words, something you add to something else that vastly increases the first thing's capabilities. When planning a professional development session using technology, there are 3 ways that you can add force multipliers so the impact of the training is increased exponentially. Here's the first one. Enlist the help of teacher leaders. When Sarah Thomas plans a technology training, she views her audience as a potential resource.
I would look for teacher leaders who might already be implementing something similar to that, or, who might be interested in helping with the presentation, or maybe doing like a small part, sharing what they talk about, or sharing what they do with the staff. So if anybody already has experience, just kind of drawing on that.
Not only does this approach enhance her presentation, it also makes the training more enjoyable for the teacher who already has that knowledge.
There's nothing worse than being at a session where you already know what's going on and you're just kind of being talked at, you know? So involving other teachers as much as possible would be one good thing.
The second way that you can add force multipliers is to make time for ed camping. Building on the notion that everybody in the room has something to share, any tech training will get a boost if you're able to set aside some time for unconference style sharing between teachers, the way it's done at an ed camp or a teach meet. Now, I have a separate blog post that's all about unconferences. People refer to them as ed camps or teach meets. So if you want to read that, then come over to the post associated with this blog post. Just go to cultofpedagogy.com/pod, click on episode 39. Or you can just do a search for the article itself. It's called Why Every Teacher Should Attend an Unconference. The way it works very quickly is that it's kind of an open thing. The attendees are the presenters. So if at any tech training, you can set aside a little bit of time for anybody who wants to jump up and just share some cool new thing that they learned. Everyone in the room will learn something new. This encourages teachers to use each other as resources rather than always relying on outsiders for help. The third way to force multiply is to include students. I always suggest that teachers include students in their tech training. If you are going to have a 2-hour PD where teachers learn a set of new tools, invite a handful of students to attend as well. Having a few students learning along with their teachers or assisting them if the students are already familiar with the tech will ultimately be a force multiplier, as those students will be able to help other students and their teachers with implementing the tech after the session is long over. So the first 2 tips we have: get to know your audience and force multiply. The third tip is make the training hands-on. When it comes to technology-based training, letting teachers get their hands on the tools just makes sense. Craig Badura explains it this way.
I guess my biggest piece of advice that I could offer after 6 years of being an integration specialist is that we need to saturate our teachers with multiple learning opportunities. I try to make anything that I create for teachers, my trainings, my sessions, I try to make whatever I create relevant to them so that they could really walk away with that and use it tomorrow, or that, they might say that wasn't really as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I think the sit and get form of PD is really useless now with teachers, so we need to start offering them different things that they can do.
There are 2 ways that you can make the training hands-on that are really kind of neat. One of them is called app task challenges. And this actually comes from Craig Badura. A few years ago, he decided to change the way he delivered tech training for teachers. Instead of just demonstrating the tools himself, he created these short, simple, hands-on tasks teachers could perform with the tools in just a few minutes. He calls these app task challenges. They're just these little PDFs that explain the tool quickly, and then they give teachers a task to do. And I have an example right on the website if you want to come over and take a look at it. Here's Craig explaining how it works.
It's something that really takes no more than about 10 minutes, and they can sit down and think, oh yeah, I could use this in my classroom.
Once teachers have tried the app, Badura ties it to instruction.
I try to give them a set of ideas on the ways that they could integrate that certain app or website in their classroom.
When training teachers with this hands-on approach, it's important to give them lots of support.
I have to have teachers get their hands dirty while they're learning a new tool, so to speak. But they have to have that assurance that I'm going to help them clean up when they get done if they need that help during that time.
So another way that you can make training hands-on is to design make and take projects. Sarah Thomas likes to have teachers begin using technology to actually create something they can use in their classrooms.
Having the participants create something that they can leave with and use tomorrow whenever they're done. So having them actually create something as opposed to just hearing a lot of theory, depending on how much time they have.
Even if teachers can't complete a project in the time allotted, just getting them to start something that could actually be used with students makes it more likely that they will use the tool later on. Tip number 4, treat it just like teaching. For some reason, professional development rarely gets the same treatment we give to classroom instruction. Even though the students are adults, they will still benefit from good quality instruction. So when you're planning a tech training, consider how you can implement these good teaching principles. The first one is differentiate. Because he knows that a room full of teachers often represents a range of skill levels, Rodney Turner differentiates his instruction.
So for instance, if I know that I have a whole bunch of basic people in the classroom, then I know that there are certain things that I'm going to make sure that they understand, and then I will add on for those that are much more advanced. So beforehand, what I do to make sure that I'm able to do that is to have an idea of what I'm going to talk about, and then to put it on several different levels. Someone who has no clue, someone who has kind of a clue, and someone who knows all about it but may not know all of the ins and outs about it. And if someone knows the ins and outs about it, I just make sure that I ask them for any suggestions.
By taking this approach, he increases the likelihood that everyone in the room gets something out of his training.
There has not been any case that someone who has joined my session knew everything. So that tells me that's good.
The other way that you can provide good instruction as a tech trainer is to do formative assessment. Turner encourages trainers to closely monitor teachers' understanding during a session and be prepared to act based on the feedback they're getting.
It's very important that the presenter is flexible, meaning that they can turn on a dime. If they realize that something's not quite going right or something's not understood, it is okay to go ahead and stop and to investigate that further, to ask questions, to bring in the audience to make sure that they also are paying attention, they understand how things are going. It's almost as though that they are an educator themselves. Well, wait, they are, and they should be an educator themselves.
Tip number 5 is stay connected. Face-to-face time is limited in any kind of training, so it's helpful to leave something with teachers that will allow them to keep learning after your session is over. This should include the trainer's contact information along with links to any other resources that were shared during the training. Turner does this with a shared document.
I have a document that they can all see and they can share and they can add on to for later on. And when they do that, then they're able to come back to it and to be able to have that as a resource for themselves. And I say, hey, here it is. And if you don't remember, hey, here's my information.
What I have said to the teachers I work with is that the time we are together in person is just the start of a conversation. Because technology grows and changes so quickly, we can't rely on traditional methods of learning to stay on top of it. We can't wait for a textbook to be published. To really make the most of what the machines can offer us, what we ultimately need is each other. So staying connected is an essential part of any kind of tech training. I'd like to thank Sarah Thomas, Rodney Turner, and Craig Badura for contributing the advice to this podcast. To get links to all the resources mentioned in this episode, including information about the Teacher's Guide to Tech, go to cultofpedagogy.com/pod and click on episode 39. Thanks for listening and have a great day. This podcast is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. To learn more, visit edupodcastnetwork.com.